Welcome back to the final episode of Series 2 of the Kyero Pro Podcast. I'm Martin Dell, one of the co-founders of Kyero.com, and with me is Alfredo Bloy-Dawson.
Hello, hello.
This episode is a wrap-up of the whole season, so no guests today. Alfredo and I are going to do our best to try and pull out the juicy bits of the other 7 episodes? Seven episodes. So if you've missed any of those, or if anything we say piques your interest, go back and find them on Spotify or wherever you find podcasts. It's fair to say, Alfredo, I think that when we started this, we had a general idea of what we wanted to cover, but we didn't know where we were going. We didn't know what we were going to find out. We've had the privilege of really getting a front row seat, talking to people who are in the thick of this, who have been thinking about leadership and the hands-on stuff of AI. And this episode hopefully will pull all that together and kind of make sense of it. But we feel, let me speak for myself. I feel a bit more confident now about the big picture of AI and what it means and what it doesn't mean.
It feels like we're at the right time to be having this conversation rather than late or too early. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And some other stuff I've been reading and listening to basically says the same thing. We're at day one of AI. The feeling of late is just because there's so much happening and there's so much change. But yeah, if you're listening to this, you're on the right track. When we started this season, we laid out 3 assumptions. And I think it's fair to say those assumptions have held up. And just briefly, we stated as a hypothesis that the AI genie is out the bottle, it's not going back in. So this isn't a topic you can ignore. It's happening whether you want to pay attention or not. And none of our guests, even the ones that weren't so bullish on AI, they agreed with that. The second assumption was you can't automate a process that doesn't exist. And all of our guests sort of validated the fact that a lot of the hard work was in documenting their current processes or even inventing a process if a process didn't exist. So that one stood up. And the third assumption was that the expert in the room is actually the person running your current process, but they're also the person most threatened by the prospect of that process being automated by AI. And we had a lot of different perspectives that validated that thought too. So it's good to know that those kind of mindsets really held up throughout the series.
Yeah, and I think the thing that probably we could take away from at this stage is that we spoke to a whole bunch of different people that didn't know each other or had never spoken and hadn't planned the conversation. But no matter who they were and what they did, they kept on coming back to the same sort of conclusions about the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, there were dissenting voices in terms of philosophical approach maybe, but not with the nuts and bolts so much.
Yeah, and I think it's also fair to say that one of the things that became very apparent very quickly is that AI was too big a topic, really, to talk about it in its entirety on a case-by-case basis, because it's a bit like talking about the internet. I think that's something that kept on popping back in my mind, is making sure that when we instruct the agents talk about AI, we refer to what part of AI we're talking about. I'd say it's fairly safe to say that a vast majority of agents are using AI in its simplest format of the ChatGPT, Claude chatbot thing.
And also, just to add some flavor into what you just said about AI is too big to discuss as a thing, when we were talking with Nick about the history and the origins of our product, Prime AI, he was talking about a version of AI that we kind of ignore now, which is machine learning and algorithmic stuff. You know, it's all AI, and we've been researching AI since the 50s. So let's be clear what we're talking about.
We started off with Harriet Beverage's "Will the Boat Go Faster?" the author of "Will the Boat Go Faster?" What was your takeaway from that conversation?
Funnily enough, I was at Harriet's book launch at the end of last week, and she happily announced that this edition of the book had made the Sunday Times bestseller list. So she was pretty chuffed by that. I think the whole thing with Harriet's episode, that was episode 1, and the title of the book is the title of the book. It doesn't exactly translate, but her story about the British rowing team winning gold in the Olympics, They wanted to know, whenever they were making a decision about anything, will it make the boat go faster? And there's a version of that that's applicable to every business and every situation. And the simple sort of translation of that is, what's this for? What am I trying to achieve? And sometimes AI is a good fit. Sometimes it's not. I think it was episode 6 with Nick and Eugenio talking about the automation inside Kyero. Eugenio spoke of how they basically had a sales rep bot that they decided not to deploy. And the reason for doing that was the underlying data that the bot was using to make decisions was not complete. And until they trusted the data, they couldn't trust what the bot would do. And I think that's a really common experience of, it looks like the bot can do black magic, but if it's based on faulty data, it's going to come up with weird conclusions. So that premise of garbage in, garbage out was certainly something we talked around in that episode and other ones. And the other, you contrast that with automating something. At the other end of the spectrum, there were agents that couldn't automate anything because they didn't have a process. It was all locked in someone's head. So, and then I think with Sharon, we touched on the idea of, as the leader, as the person, or maybe the founder of the business, who's had an experience of being the go-to guy, the guy that always knows, the guy that makes decisions, or girl, prospect of AI automating that can be quite threatening. And so getting a process out of the founder's head or somebody else's head can be a challenge, because it looks like you're trying to dispense with that part of the person's role.
Ironically, the most tech-forward bunch in that episode, where we had Kian and Matt and Oscar, we were I was expecting them to come out and have all this really high-tech AI stuff that they were probably using, and they are using AI across the whole business. But their message was, look, it's most of the applications that we're using is boring automations and just automating stuff of steps that our team were taking. And in their case, they were using, in the High Homes case, they were using it a lot for the lead distribution. So they're getting a tremendous amount of leads every month. They got a fairly big team, and trying to sort of do all the steps in the lead up to getting that team member to be able to do the follow up is where the AI was coming. But I think it was Kian that was saying, just open up like a Zapier account, which is a sort of an automation, an app that you can get where you can connect different things together with some rules. And really the bit that surprised me is that the AI element, and this applies to Kyero as well as to those guys, is that there's an AI layer in there somewhere in that automation where it can use a bit of logic and a bit of reasoning. But the whole thing isn't the AI. The AI is a part of the whole thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I'll give you another example of this. I'm playing around with using Codex and Claude Code to build bots that trade FX pairs. I mean, I'm just playing around, and that's building a bot to write code to trade is very different from letting the AI trade. And when people talk about AI traders, there's all different sorts of flavors. It could be AI surfacing information that a human trader uses. It could be AI trading directly. I'm not sure anybody's daft enough to try that. Not with real money anyway. Or in my case, using a bot to build code that runs a pre-programmed set of routines. So you can insert AI into automation in various places, or have none at all. Maybe some of the dumb Zapier stuff is perfectly fine. Keep it simple, stupid, I think.
Most of the people we spoke to were tinkering with this idea of AI agents, weren't they? And AI agents, for the sake of the listener, we're not talking AI estate agents. They happen to be called AI agents. And these are how would you explain it succinctly? Because I'm sure I'm going to suck it. But what would be the simple explanation of what an AI agent is, Mark?
Well, I think if we start from what people already know, they know about chatting with AI. An AI agent is just one step further. You have a conversation and then the AI does something. I mean, if you've played with Perplexity, which is kind of a shopping focused AI, that's agentic in that you say, hey, I'm thinking of buying another black T-shirt. This is my size. I like this material. Go and find me the best deals. So that example with Perplexity is an agentic workflow, whereas 2 or 3 years ago when we were just chatting with AI, you might go, give me a list of all of the suppliers of black T-shirts in my area, gives you a list, and then you go and do the heavy lifting.
Right. Okay. Got you. You've been reading a book called Reverse Centaur. Tell me about that.
Yeah, there's an author, Cory Doctorow. He writes science fiction. He's also quite tech and politically active. So really interesting author if you fancy a read or a listen. But his latest book called Reverse Centaur is based on the premise, if you visualize a centaur, which is a human torso on a horse's body, the idea is that you've got the smarts of the human and the power of the horse. That's the centaur. The reverse centaur is a horse's head on the bottom half of a human body, where you've got the worst of both worlds. You've got the horse thinking and the human doing the locomotion. And the whole premise of the book, Reverse Centaur, is, are you using the technology? Like, are you the person in control of the engine that is AI, the Centaur? Or is it a case of Reverse Centaur, where the AI is doing all of the value-added stuff, and you're just the part that's the arms and legs that the AI doesn't have at the moment? So it's a really interesting premise.
That is super interesting way of putting it, actually, because you could, like, I think everybody in the conversation, everybody seems to agree with this idea that say, put myself in the position of a state agent, we'd like to get all the boring stuff out of the way so that we can spend time doing where it really matters, the customer stuff, the human element and all that. But if you're not careful and you go down the wrong road, you could end up doing it so that you're just basically manning the controls of the AI automation. And the AI automation is one having all the conversations with your customers, which is kind of not what you were trying to do, right? That sort of thing.
Totally. And I think that's what people fear when they look at their job being automated. They fear they're just going to be moved further and further down the end of the production line. Whereas I think the hope, the aspiration is the reverse, that we use AI as a tool where it can help us and elevate us to do something uniquely human.
I think that this whole conversation is also making everybody reevaluate what we actually mean by that in terms of, especially in real estate. It's easy to throw around the terms of like, well, this is a human to human thing. It's trust. People want to talk to a person. And it sort of really making us think now, what are the actual elements of the job that are the bit that the consumer or the customer wants to deal with a person, and what is the other stuff that we're just making excuses for and they don't really want to. And I think quite a few people used examples. I think Nick, the operations director at Kyero, said, we would use an AI bot to talk to customers where there is a concrete answer to a concrete question. Why would you want to wait down a queue till next week to get an answer about where can I download my invoices from or something like that? And there's a misconception maybe that we think that the buyer wants to have that conversation with a human. And I think that's where we're really going to sort of over the next 6 months to a year, it's become so introspective to think about the whole process that I think we'll have a clear idea, both us and the buyers, as to what are the elements that are the human elements, and really where does the trust get formed? Because the information, we kind of associate giving you valuable information with some way of generating trust, but perhaps that information, now that it's more accessible to everybody else, we don't really know the answer, but maybe it's more the context or the advice, therefore do this. And somehow inherently human to human, I trust your opinion, so I'll do what you say, and not maybe what ChatGPT is suggesting I say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And you raised a point a couple of episodes back that maybe, talking about Kyero and selling advertising to estate agents, maybe estate agents don't want to talk to us to get a price. Maybe they just want to know, what's the price? What is the price? What's the terms? What can I expect? And I agree with you. When there's an answer to a question, that's the perfect place to deploy basically automated documentation, isn't it? I mean, nobody ever reads the help docs because they never answer the question that you've got. They answer a version of the question, a generic version. But the AI can take the generic information and apply it directly and come up with a specific answer, which I agree with you is much better than waiting for a human to say the same thing a week later.
I think one of the things that Lorraine raised on this, the information that's available for a property buyer, say on I want to buy somewhere in Torremolinos or whatever, is, you'll have hospitals and schools and train stations and price per square meter and ROI and yields for rentals and stuff like that. But it isn't yet at the stage where it would tell you that on a Saturday night it's full of kids partying, or that they're about to build an industrial waste plant next door, or that there's a lot of noise from the motorway. And it seems to be that's the bit that maybe eventually AI will tell you that too. But at this stage, that's the big differentiator. And that's what makes a difference, not between a human estate agent and a robotic estate agent, but currently is the difference between a good estate agent and an inexperienced estate agent. That's the value add. And I see the same comparable with this, with what's the difference between Lorraine giving me advice whether I should buy this place in Torremolinos or AI giving me the advice. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And it's, that could look like a data problem, couldn't it? But it's not just raw data. It's what does that data mean? Is it relevant to this person? Those are really, really tricky judgment calls. But I think what Dr. O's saying in his book is let's leverage data and AI where it works. Let's recognize where it doesn't work. And the example he gives in the book is where Amazon workers adjust the arms and legs at the end of working in a factory. They're the arms and legs at the end of a sort of a conveyor belt. He said, you don't want to be, that's not a good outcome for society. But leveraging AI to make better decisions and then present those decisions with all of your human smarts, that's a great use of AI. One other warning he mentions in the book is a thing called automation blindness, and we've come across that at Kyero, where a process works well enough, you've automated it well enough, that even if you're the human in the loop to check that the process is still working, you eventually lose the ability to tell whether it's working or not, because you don't have any examples of bad, so you stop recognizing bad. And that's a danger he flags in the book. And I think that's really something to think about, the danger of going on autopilot.
I come across that a lot with estate agencies and have done over the years, where if you have something that's automated, there was the whole idea of automating it was so that we didn't have to think about it. And so as much as one should check, sometimes you can't check the lack of good. You could check the bad. So if somebody says, I tried filling in your thing, or you sent me this email and it's all in German, then that's the red flag for you to go check it. But nobody's gonna email you to tell you, or customer's not going to complain to say, I didn't get email 3, the one where you offer this really cool thing to me, because they don't know there's an email 3 that they're supposed to be getting. You know what I mean? So almost like the absence of good is pretty invisible. And I think this idea of automation blindness totally is the case already with estate agents. And I think that is the risk.
AI just takes that to a whole new level. It just amplifies the number of ways things can go wrong.
Interesting you say that, because the Seth Godin, the marketing guru that deserves that title, he framed it saying that we're heading towards a divide between amplifying agency and becoming a cog in the machine. And which one do you choose? And I thought real estate, that, as we just said, is a very valid thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And for estate agents listening to this, the business of selling property is clearly a human-to-human thing. And I don't see all of that ever, even though we're talking about AI agents, I don't see an AI agent replacing a human estate agent. I see it selectively automating things that actually we're not very good at as humans, repetitive tasks, paying attention to detail, that kind of stuff. But we do need to be mindful in this industry, but in general, of where we're using AI as a tool, or where we're becoming just the arms and legs of the AI. And we're not there yet. AI is nowhere near capable enough of doing that, but I don't think it's a path we want to start down.
Going on to Sharon Collier, who's the leadership coach expert from the leadership school. She was mentioning something which I thought was quite interesting. Is called this wicked issue framing, and why AI adoption is not really a tech problem. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, that was that episode was the first time I'd heard her talk about a wicked issue, and I like that framing because it kind of gives me permission not to have all the answers. If it was a simple issue, or I don't know what the opposite of a wicked issue would be, but if it was a simple issue, then I might be expected to come up with a solution. But a wicked issue is complex, many moving parts, legacy problems, future problems, disruption problems. And her point, I think, was it's too big to solve in one bite, so don't try. Is that what you got from what she said?
Totally. And I think just acknowledging that it's not easy, that it is big, that it is disruptive, and it's okay not to know, and it's okay not to even have people in your team that know how to do stuff. I think giving permission to seek outside help and expertise and advice on this huge earth-shattering change that we're undergoing, I think that's pretty cool. I think that kind of resonating, because I think there's probably going to be an element, well, there is already, I know it actually, within agencies where every estate agency has like their tech person. Normally it's not their full-time job, but it's like the one that's pretty good with computers or something. That's the sort of that sort of person. And there's already a little bit of like shaming going on, sort of, because these estate agencies are looking at their tech person going, hey, what should we be doing? And why would they know? It's brand new, and I think it's okay for them not to know.
Yes. Yeah. When Sharon was talking about the wicked problem, her first advice really tied up with our introduction from Harriet, will it make the boat go faster? Sharon's version of that was zoom out and go, what am I trying to achieve? What's important here? What's going to move the needle? What's going to make the boat go faster? And then having figured that out, to zoom in, laser focus on one thing where you can play and experiment and try. And that tallied with one of the guys from High Homes. He said, go and get somebody from Upwork or Fiverr and fix one thing. And I really liked his framing of problems as paper cuts. Don't choose world peace or, just choose.
Yeah.
I was really annoying having to upload my expenses to every month. I wonder if I can automate that. Choose a paper cut, a point of annoyance. So yes, step back, zoom out and go, what's important to me, but then zoom in and go, what's one specific, really tiny thing that I could affect and play with?
Totally. And I think the other thing that Sharon, hopefully I'll be able to explain my point here. The natural assumption from the estate agency owners that what's in it for everybody is that we'll all make more money, we'll be more efficient, and we'll be happier. That we kind of have to address this issue of like, everybody wants to know what's in it for me. How does it affect me? How am I going to benefit? And you're asking me to leave this current role to go to this role, but this role hasn't been defined yet. So there's probably a stage in the middle in terms of where I need to sort of become familiar with what I'm leaving behind and what I'm going to gain from it. Did you get that too from what she was saying?
Yeah, that was a great point. And it's certainly one that I've been guilty of as a leader and a founder, is to assume that everybody understands what's in it for them. That is obvious, because it's obvious to me, it must be obvious to them. And that's just, it's not a useful assumption. And also, like you say, I may be doing this boring set of tasks over on the right-hand side, but I know it. I know I've got some security there. And you're asking me to move to a thing that is either undefined or poorly defined. And actually, I'm more comfortable over here. Thank you very much. I'm not letting this go till I know what that looks like. And like I've said in previous episodes, we've made those mistakes.
And I would say that as far as, because sometimes maybe we're a little bit guilty of being too cautious and too like, oh no, nobody wants this. It's going to take our jobs. It's going to make it less human. Who wants a robot to sell us a prop? All that sort of conversation. I kind of, in my head, I see an estate agency having this, like say, two elements. You have the administrative side, the management side, if you like, and then the selling property part of it, the broker's job. And I think there's the battle is in the admin side. It's also where the more logical use of AI falls within, as we've been discussing. It's also where, as a leader or as an owner, you're going to have to address the fact that it sounds a lot like you're replacing their job. If you take away you automate all the admin tasks, the admin person in the office is going to be going, right, does that mean you're just going to let me do less work for the same money or something else? But from the broker side, I think the brokers are all into this. They're like, look, the lead generation standard, obviously it's a referral is different, but standard lead generation, we talk about a 1% conversion rate from lead to sale. That means that if you were like in the dating game, you'd have to go into a nightclub, ask 100 girls out, and one would say yes, and nobody wants to do that. It's a very particular kind of person that needs to do that. It'd be a lot easier if you could just point to me and tell me which girl in the club is the one that's going to say yes, and I can just put my energies into her. And so I think estate agents, they're like, hell yeah. Instead of giving me 100 leads, just give me that one. Or do something that will at least give me 5 that I have to work, rather than having to work my way through a 99% failure rate, which nobody enjoys, nobody wants to do. When we're out with customers, we don't have time for that sort of thing. So I think that they're probably looking at some people like us going, we're sold, go for it, do it, make it happen. Now, the key, and this goes back to your Centaur example, is the solution they're after isn't for you to speak to the girl in the nightclub, but the solution they're after is you speak to everybody else. You tell me who the girl in the nightclub is, and I'll speak to her. So they're not looking for AI to take over their job as they see it, the part of building the communication with the customer, getting to know what they want, understanding their needs, advising them over what is a long period of time. That bit, they're not looking for AI, in my opinion, certainly from what I'm hearing. But they are looking for the sort of filtering process, the qualifying of the lead process. They're like, hell yeah, bring that on. And they would be willing to sacrifice some humanity at that very early stage. Say, look, sorry, potential buyer, you're going to get a bot. But as soon as I know that you're in it and you're actually serious about this, you got me, and you got me for as long as it takes to make this happen. And I think that's kind of where their head is at.
Yeah, and a couple of points you raised there made me think of the sort of the theme running through this entire series is that AI is kind of being pitched as cost reduction of labor, and that's certainly the theme inside Cory Doctorow's Reverse Centaur book. But in actual fact, it costs money to implement AI. And the jobs are not being displaced, they're changing. So you're not going to save money on labor, probably not long term anyway, but what you might be doing is automating processes that give you more leverage, that give you more opportunity, give you more efficiency. So I was listening to a podcast with the CEO of IBM the other day, and he said, we're 5 years into applying AI inside the business, and we're now seeing a return on investment, but they've been pumping money into automation, and I think they said they doubled the number of graduates they're employing this year, not reducing. And graduate jobs are the ones that are most likely to be displaced, sort of entry-level jobs. So I think that's a framing. We need to see AI as an investment, as an increased cost, not as a reduction of employment spend. I think the same employees, if they're willing and we coach and we lead correctly, will be doing more with their time, will be doing more human tasks. And I think we'll just be using automation to make them more efficient and give them actually elevate their jobs. But it's not cost saving outright.
Although people listen to us will go, yeah, you guys sound really naive. Of course, it's cost saving, right? Because, unless you're scaling your business, and not everybody wants to build a business to be $1 billion real estate agency, you're probably looking at maintaining it. And when things are a bit quiet, you need to know what levers you can pull to reduce your costs. And so naturally, people are going to be thinking along those sort of lines. But going back to the job thing, I was at an event a few weeks ago, and it was about AI. And they had a guy from Google, actually, I think it was cybersecurity or something. It was a guy from Google anyway, an engineer. And they asked him, how does he see his job being threatened? Surely he's the one how has his job changed with AI already? And he explained it really simply. He said, before you could say, let's say in construction, before my job was more of a builder. So I was putting the bricks on for the building. Now I'm the architect now. And that's just such a great way of explaining that sort of zoom out element where now he's not writing code, but he's managing things that are writing code. And that sounds like fun, doesn't it, for most people? If the question will be, if they had 10 builders laying bricks, do they still need 10 architects?
Sure. And I think the pitch from the AI companies is this technology is kind of the plumbing to increase wealth in general. It's a productivity tool. But of course, I think part of the reduction of employment cost might be, like you say, I'm a scaling business. I want to scale up. Maybe I don't need to scale my people up. Maybe I can do some of it with AI so that my employment costs don't scale in line with my revenue. I think there's an opportunity there. But like we said at the beginning of this episode, we're at day one of this. It's not like there's a playbook that you can just go, oh yeah, do this, save cost here, make money there, bingo, I've got a better business. Everybody's finding their way in their own way and figuring out where it fits and where it doesn't fit.
Yeah, totally. And I think going back to my broker example, where they make most of the money through commissions. That's how the company makes the money, the estate agency makes the money, and so on. That would be a way of scaling. If I could hire one broker and say, right, I'm going to give you 100 leads a month. You have to work those 100 leads. I expect 1 to 2 sales out of those leads every month. And you need to follow them up whilst you're doing viewings and dealing with the people you are dealing with. If I could say, look, I'm just going to put in front of you the 1 or 2 people that are going to buy through some degree of AI fancy work of qualification. Now, does that mean that you can make 10 sales a month and to make 10 times more money, and we can make 10 times more money? So you could scale with a much leaner team. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of that. We see agencies that we would typically consider to be estate agencies that we typically consider to be one-man bands suddenly doing 10, 15 sales a month. And you're thinking, how the hell are they doing that? I only got 1 broker or 2 brokers, and how are they doing these transaction numbers? And I think that would then expand to everything else to do with the admin side for the pre-sale, post-sale, the searching, the filtering, so it's kind of like this idea of this cyborg superhuman sort of thing. I think didn't Kian from Hyom say that he saw it as something from Transformers or something? No, it's from Avatar, where he had like the exoskeleton and they made him super powerful and superhuman. And I can see that happening, can you?
Yes, I can. And it sort of ties in nicely with what Sharon's main message in the last episode was. The real squishy bit of this whole AI question is the human side. Is like, will people use it? Will they adopt it? Will you as a leader bring them on and lead them through this transition? Or do they see you sprinting ahead and they're trying to scurry behind catching up? It's the human squishy stuff that's going to determine success or failure here.
And I think we should learn a lesson from, or agents could learn a lesson from the fact that we talk about automation a lot, haven't we, in this whole series? And automation's been around for ages. Zapier that Kian I was using, I've forgotten how to use Zapier. I was using it so long ago. You know what I mean? And that stuff was all through. And I didn't really hear many estate agencies going bankrupt because they were not using Zapier, and those crushing it because they were. They were a bit more efficient this way. They were a bit efficient that way. So I think we should also remember that it doesn't necessarily, it's not a binary thing. It doesn't mean that if you're using this to do that, AI to do whatever the process is from all the topics that we discuss, it doesn't by default mean that the other one goes bankrupt and disappears. It just means that they're less efficient. And most companies are inefficient in certain ways, and that they just continue operating. They're still efficient enough to make profit. You know what I mean? So it's not so binary as you're not going to do it, you're dead. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And doing it badly, or doing it and alienating your staff, those are all risks too.
And sometimes it's not worth automating or not worth AIing. I know agencies where they maybe get 4 or 5 leads a week, small outfit, They don't need that to be automated. They got all the time in the world to deal with those leads. You know what I mean? They're like, well, I think the other element that at this stage of the conversation, and I just say this stage because I think it will change, but this stage of the conversation is you can't calculate, like when we say, will this make the boat go faster? And the reason we're asking that is to sort of say, is this going to move the needle? Is it worth doing? And that equation always comes with a cost, doesn't it? Is it worth the cost of doing this, the effort of doing this? And as of today, nobody has a Scooby-Doo idea what that cost is. Aside from a $20 a month subscription to ChatGPT, it's such early days. We don't really know what these things cost to even be able to assess what's involved. How much work is it going to take to take someone on to do all these things for me? We spoke with Annalise and Christina and Johan about this like 3-4 month period of training the AI and all that. Who's got that time? Is that how long it takes? Can it take less? So I think this whole, I hate using the word ROI, but the ROI element of, is this worth the effort and the money? It's as of today, state agencies would be forgiven to have no clue about that, because what does it cost? I need to know what it costs and how much effort, how much I got to put into this equation to be able to assess the ROI of, is it worth doing? Is it going to make the boat go faster? Well, yeah, but not if it costs $10,000 and takes 2 years. Do you know what I mean? I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I do. And from what I've been hearing from big corporates who are spending a lot of money on AI tokens, well, first of all, the token spend isn't predictable. You've no idea how many tokens a task is going to use to create. And you've no idea how many tokens it's going to take to run. So you don't know how to budget for tokens, and it's real money. Particularly in Anthropic's case, their token cost is quite high with their very clever models. But the general consensus is that AI is going to get more expensive in the future. The way the AI business is so power hungry and GPU hungry and capital intensive, there's no correlation between what we're currently paying for tokens and what they will cost in the future. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, and the amount of money that's poured into the AI companies, somehow at some point someone's going to want their money back, their return.
Yes, that'll be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah. I think we've nailed the positioning by fluke probably of this conversation this season of the podcast, because it's about the right stage. Like, these are conversations we need to start having. Some people are doing stuff, but it's early days. Some people are waiting and seeing, but got their eye on it. And I think at this stage, that's all anybody can hope for.
Yes, I agree. I think the only mistake is ignoring it or pretending it's not happening, and justifying that position because you're human first, anti-AI. And this is too big and too current and too disruptive to ignore. That's all I would say.
100% agree. 100% agree. I think somebody described it as a giant cruise ship leaving the port, and it's not leaving fast. There's still time to get on it, but get on it. Because you decide you want to get on it when it's in the middle of the Atlantic, then it's going to be tricky for you.
Yes, it reminds me of when pretty much all computing moved to the cloud. Right at the beginning, I remember sort of tech people going, no, we must have our own technology. It must be, boxes in racks in data centers that we can touch and stuff. And we were actually in that position. We held out. We didn't go to the cloud. And it was really expensive and quite painful to move to the cloud when we did. So I think now's the time to get somewhat familiar with what's going on, have a passing familiarity with the world of AI.
100%.
So I think we've done a good job of talking around 7 episodes of how estate agents should be using AI. Let's nail this down. Alfredo, what are your main takeaways? What if you could just get somebody in a bar for 10 minutes, what would you tell them?
Okay, I've made a list. I've got 10. Otherwise I'll forget or I'll start repeating myself. Right. So in no particular order, these are my 10 tips for estate agents on the overarching story about how they should think and look at AI. Number 1, you should be open-minded and AI curious. Podcasts such as these, and be open to team input. So if you're not really aware of it, but your team are telling you about it, don't just close your ears to it. Tip number 2, you don't need to be an early adopter. What do I mean by that? You don't need to be the first one trying it. It's okay to wait to find out enough use cases, whether it be the supplier or the services or from other agents, to say we're doing it and it's working really well. That might be the right time to take part. You don't need to be first, is what I'm saying. Tip number 3. You need to, when you're talking about AI to your team, to suppliers, or to anybody in a business, you have to be a bit more specific. So don't just talk about AI. We don't use AI. We do use AI. Be more specific about what you mean by that, because chances are that when you're briefing somebody about something that you want, or you're having a conversation, that you're going to probably be talking about 2 different things. Tip number 4, it's okay to outsource. AI is new. You can't expect your team internally to just be experts at it. Even some of your suppliers, they should be suppliers of servers, they should be adopting AI into their ecosystem, particularly when it's like marketing and tech related suppliers. But it is new, so they can't possibly be experts at it yet. You just kind of want to know that it's okay to ask outsiders, and it's okay. It's logical to have to pay somebody just because you know an agency that has somebody in their team that's an AI expert because they're a geek and they love it. Don't get mad at your own team for not having that person in your team, as long as they're AI curious. Number 5, leaders, state agency owners need to address the what's in it for me element for the brokers or for the admins team or whoever they're speaking about. That's how you frame it. You frame it as in, wouldn't you like to have to do less work qualifying your leads, or how would you like to be able to just kind of move from laying the bricks to being the architect? Number 6, the elephant in the room is always going to be cutting costs. Cutting equals cutting staff, especially in administrative roles. So you I think Sharon said that in the last episode, you got to address that, and you got to be as honest as you can on that whole point. Number 7, agency bosses need buy-in from their teams. And I think the High Homes people talked about it be one of their themes for this year, about being obsessive over getting feedback and making and affecting that feedback when they get it from the teams. But you do need your team to be on board with it for it to move forward. And that's something I would suggest you listen to the episode with High Homes, and also the last episode with Sharon Collier, on where she talks about the way you can frame getting your team to be part of this. Number 8, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. It's the shiny app syndrome. Now, I think this is probably more a sort of a thing for those who like shiny new things, and which a lot of us do. But it is what it is, and call it what it is. So this isn't us adopting AI. It's this cool app that turns me into a pro golfer video or something like that. Fine, have a play. It's not bad to do that. But just because you can do it, it doesn't mean you should do it. Then the number 9, it's okay to play as long as there's guardrails. So it's okay to create situations where, taking a little bit of what you were saying, Martin, about the taking a little bite out of it here, a little bit about it here, rather than dealing with the whole AI thing in one big, massive, overarching project. But you can create situations where, let's have a play with follow-up. Let's have a play with this. That's how you give permission to your teams to try stuff, and you just create what the parameters around it. So they say, okay, well, we're not going to do it for this, but you can do it for that. And this is when we're going to have a look at it. Let's do it, have a bit of fun with it, and let's talk next month. And that's a good practice to get everybody's juices flowing and to find solutions that maybe you didn't even know that you had. And then the final point is accept that it's new, that what somebody said yesterday may not be relevant today, and it might not even be their fault because it may have changed by today. And because it's evolving, and because it's new, and because it affects everything, it's very noisy. And that's just how it is. Don't bury your head in the sand. That's Martin's advice. It's my advice. Just keep an ear to it, but just accept the fact that until things start to settle down a little bit, you got everything like we had when the internet came about, everything from Pong to online yellow pages, and one of those no longer exists. And those are my top 10 tips.
Those are outstanding. I think we should definitely put those in the show notes as a summary. That's a great playbook, actually, I think, of how should I be thinking about this as a estate agency owner. The 3 really resonated with me. Number 5, what's in it for me? Really easy to assume that your people know what you know and think what you think. It's worth being explicit about that. And the High Homes sort of framing of that as solving their paper cuts, solving their annoyances, I think is genius. Number 6, the elephant in the room. Are you just trying to replace me? Totally agree. Deal with that head on, deal with it with empathy. Do what you can to make the future role, the future task, look as real as the stuff that they already know. And I held my hand up to number 8, shiny thing syndrome. Guilty as charged. Well, that was a whirlwind tour of the world of AI. I think it's been a fascinating season. I've learned a lot. And I think we had a really good mixture of guests, some pro, some anti, some tech, some more human side. It feels like we've got a really solid overview of what's going on right now. And your 10 takeaway points, I think, for agents is a great start for anybody trying to figure out how to get into this.
So that's it for season 2 of the Kyero Pro podcast. This one was all about AI. Season 3 will be coming up shortly. We're open to suggestions, whether it be as a theme throughout the whole season or whether on an episode by episode basis. Let us know in the comments wherever you're listening to this or watching this. Let us know what your suggestions are. And we look forward to seeing you in the next season.